What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Astro Vibe Show. My name is Malik Harris.
My name is Pt1.
I'm Derek Moore.
And this is where you come to
Vibe with the
Tribe.
Today we are finally jumping into every Warhammer fantasy faction explained.
Fan.
Yeah, the fantasy side of things.
Trying to be a fan.
As you guys know, we've been jumping into Warhammer for the past few months at least. Super just diving into a little bit of everything. Video games. We got into some of the tabletop stuff because we bought figurines and stuff like that. We started actually painting and putting them together and all that good stuff.
And
which we will. Yeah, we will be dropping a vlog here pretty soon for that. As soon as we hit 10,000 subscribers. So, yeah. If you're not new here and you've been here multiple times, hit that subscribe button so we can get to that number and drop this vlog. It's gonna be super dope.
It'd be dope. It's funny.
Books, as Derek was just saying, brand new books, super dope. I wanted to look at the figurines and stuff and see some of the artwork, but it also has like lore and things like that. A bunch of different cool facts and stuff about the world. Yeah. I'm also reading Horus Rising, which is really good. I'm on chapter 5 right now. It's very. It sets like a very, very good tone for like the Warhammer universe because you kind of get to see like their not day to day, but you get to see them. Yeah, I guess in a way like day to day. Just how they talk. I thought they were a little bit more stern, not very emotionally, giving and stuff like this. And I feel like this has a lot more texture to how Astartes actually are. Like right now, we're focused on like the lunar wolves and shit like that.
I mean, versus reaction, you got time to like pause and take time
Kind
to
of
like go
digest
back and like understand what you're going through. So like I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Ruination. That's just up here because I didn't have another book to balance it out, you know. But I'm reading that, and that's also good.
Big
all
book
that
and
stuff
little
aside,
book.
I know, right? Ruination's a good book. I'm not gonna lie.
Nah, you snuck that one in there. I'm sorry. He
This one?
He did this behind my back, y'all.
Oh yeah, you haven't seen that's the new one.
He did me dirty.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get that out the way. I'll shut up now.
Okay, fantasy side of things though, I'm super excited for this. We've been holding off because we just wanted to focus on 40 and get like the timeline and stuff like that. So, yeah. I don't have too much more to say.
Me neither. Let's get into it
y'all
now.
for being here.
Yeah, let's jump into this.
Within the hobby space, it's a new chance for me to try and convert anyone, into accepting that the Eldar are actually really cool and interesting, and please, just for 5 minutes, stop saying elf bad. But speaking of elves, every time there's a wave of people that first learn about Warhammer, there's always one thing in common with them. None of them realize there's more to Warhammer than Space Marines, Tyranids, and spikier Space Marines. There's a whole other pair of settings that also exist, and they just fly right under the radar half the time. And this sucks, because the best Warhammer setting is right there. Yeah, GW ended it, but then it came back. And if you don't want to, you don't even have to collect thousands of dollars of minis to play with this one. Kind of. Warhammer Fantasy has been around longer than even 40k. It's had its ups, it's had its downs. It got blown up for a little bit, but thanks to Total War, Vermintide, and the constant...
Okay, Old World. People were just talking about this in the Discord, and they were collecting. Oh, the skeleton. Damn, that's crazy. Who was that? Actually, hold on. I gotta do a shout out because we always see like little snippets of extra things that we haven't quite yet got to in the Discord. I'm always like kind of searching through it, and I'll see people just talking about just whatever the fuck. I know Necromundo is something we got to get into. Like, there's a couple of trailers for that. Let me know if you guys want us to dive into. Is that like high priority thing, or should we kind of go through fantasy a little bit? Because I have a couple people who have made some playlists for me and stuff like that, and I try to navigate this wide landscape of Warhammer content, but there's just so much of it that I never really know what we should kind of take a moment to just really focus on.
Yeah.
Mr. Oogie Boogie, hey, shout out to you.
Hey,
the one.
Boogie Boogie.
Also, shout out to Arvin Zerilis. Oh, Arvin Zeris. Yeah. Oh, man, Jesus Christ. I'm not going to say too many of these names. Edion, you're always posting every day. You're a goat. Mr. Oogie Boogie, why are you posting so many videos?
It's the one with the football.
Blood Bowl? I haven't even seen this one yet.
Yeah, that's
this is
crazy.
A football one? I don't even know what this is about. Hey, shout out to you. All right, let's get back to the video.
Hey, but having figurines in this already, just looking at the screen right now, crazy work.
Yeah.
The skeleton dragon.
Lone Warrior 21, shout out to you too.
Oh yeah, shout out to you too. I ain't never meant to disrespect you.
No, you're-
Oh.
Oh, my bad, big dog.
My bad, my bad.
Nagging of the community, you can once again play in the old world, with elves, dwarfs, and humans as standard, but also some more out there races, such as magical frogs, rats, and Walmart shoppers. And not enough people know about them.
Walmart shoppers.
Not nearly enough.
Alright,
Not nearly
Sam,
enough
I
people
get
learn that this setting is even a thing. So I'm gonna be doing my part today. Today I'm gonna learn you all about every faction in Warhammer
Learn you
Fantasy.
all.
Some of them had extensive army lists and plot relevance, some of them languished in unupdated army books for years on end, and some of them until recently were relegated to about 3 pages of background lore. Doesn't matter, we're doing it all. If you can conceivably consider it an actual faction, they'll be here. Think of it
So
as a
many more
companion to this
factions here.
video. That one was me trying to overview the setting as a whole, and this one is about the groups of people in the setting. So let's dive into a world of fantasy and see what all that nonsense about them having the Warhammer is all about. But you're about to start listening to me list off all kinds of factions. And do you know what you could be listening to me with? Raycon and their Everyday Earbuds,
Oh, yeah.
the sponsor of this video. Raycon's Everyday Earbuds are some of the finest available on the market, and they've got a new and improved version just to go that extra mile. Let's just get right into the features of these bad boys. Multi-point connectivity, so if you and someone else want to share the music, you can with no problems. Active noise cancellation, because sometimes the outside world just needs to take a step back for a bit. And a new sleek ergonomic design to make them look and feel better than ever before. Let's even began.
We're not sponsored by
Thank you,
Raycon.
bro.
That's orc
Yeah, sorry.
spelled with a C, by the way, not a K. But across the board, the greenskins of Warhammer Fantasy aren't that different from the ones in 40k, which is why we're starting with them. They like to fight,
Nice.
they're mushroom people, they're green. If you took an orc from 40k and put him in a greenskin tribe in Fantasy, he probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Might wonder why no one has a decent shooter hanging around, but he'd be content with his life regardless. He might even be happier, because these orcs have characters
You know what? Sorry. I'll be right back.
You would put the orange shirt on.
I gotta put on my new favorite
Oh
orc
my
shirt.
God.
I wasn't expecting us to start out so heavy.
like Grimgor instead of Ghazghkull. There are no thinking and tactics for Grimgor, only beating everything near him to death. The Greenskins used to have some pretty different lore, being closer to D&D
Oh,
than
this is,
anything else. They had half-orcs, and they didn't reproduce with mushroom spores.
Or is
Then
it?
as time went on, that
Yeah.
was moved away from, and eventually we came to where we are now in the Old World. That being that the Orcs hopped a ride with the Old Ones' ships when they came to the Warhammer Fantasy world. More on them later. From there, they naturally began spreading out across the entire world. The Old Ones and their servants did their best to get rid of the Orcs, as they did all other races they weren't quite fond of, but you
Didn't
can't
like
get
this
rid of the
race.
Orcs
They
once
was
they're on a planet. It's just not possible. So nowadays, if you wander around a given area long enough, chances are you'll find some greenskins kicking about, making things worse for whoever lives there. The Orcs themselves are one of the biggest similarities between the two settings. The biggest guy is in charge of the tribe, and if you get a real big boss, he might be in charge of multiple tribes. And when you get a really big boss, you can get a whole proper WoW going. When this happens, you usually get a whole lot of dead humans and dwarfs. Painting something red still makes it go faster, painting it blue makes it luckier, and can block arrows from killing the blue-painted orc. And they still love looting. Not nearly as much as in 40k, but you can always find an
to see
orc in a
more.
tribe wearing dwarf plate armor or wielding a human greatsword he grabbed off a corpse. They do have some more savage brethren who judge other orcs for using things like basic tools or digging a pit to shit in rather than just letting it drop where you stand, but aside from being a bit more magical, those orcs aren't really all that different. Where you get the biggest change, though, is with the goblins. See, in 40k, grots are an entire species of plot irrelevance to the orcs. You'll get one like Makari once in a blue moon who are allowed to be in the shadow of the spotlight of a far more famous orc, but the goblins in fantasy are an actual threat all by themselves. Sure, they're still cowardly and will refuse a stand-up fight unless they outnumber the enemy 40-1. Sure, they're still kicked around by the orcs and are used to do all the manual construction stuff. And sure, they're still slightly smarter than the orcs, so anything resembling any actual construction or research is done by them. But every now and then, not often, but every now and then, you get a goblin who's a cut above the rest. And when that happens, everyone's in trouble. The goblins are cunning little buggers. They know in a straight-up fight they're gonna lose, so they'll wait till the biggest orc around is sleeping and slit his throat. Or poison his food, or convince him there's something shiny in a nearby cave filled with hungry trolls. And sometimes, if they're really insane, they'll overdose on literally magic mushrooms, and when they come back to reality, they've slaughtered every orc in charge in a manic frenzy. Now instead of a big green moron who just about knows which way is forward leading the army, you have someone like Skarsnik leading an orc army. A green little Sun Tzu who's gonna run circles around you and your entire military.
That's
or you
honestly
can get
really
one that
cool.
pretty much just lucks into the position, like Grom the Paunch, hallowed be his girth. Instead of being clever, he just got incredibly lucky and was forced to eat troll meat. Instead of exploding, which is normally what happens when you do that, he just kept growing alongside it. 3 things happened. 1, he got so incredibly fat he'd beat rival orcs by sitting on them. 2, he
Damn.
became a legend among goblins everywhere, the alpha male fantasy they all wish they could be. And 3, he nearly ended the world by sailing from the equivalent of the Middle East or Africa to the middle of the Atlantic and destabilizing the High Elves. If you like grots but
Damn.
wish they could, do anything important ever, maybe take a look at the goblins.
this
Their
fat-ass
history really
green
isn't
is a
anything
weed.
special though, mostly because they're greenskins and what you see is what you get. Usually, they beat each other up. Every now and again, one of them beats up enough orcs that he convinces them all
Gets
to
a
go
higher
beat
power.
someone else up instead. This continues until that war boss is killed, and then the orcs disband and go back to beating each other up again. Some evil dwarfs like to use them as slaves, and when they tried to make bigger, stronger, and smarter orcs to use as slaves, they immediately learned why that was a bad idea when the orcs revolted. If you like being mean and green, you'll like the orcs. And one crucial thing I nearly forgot, they love to dance. Wurzag may be the prophet of the orc gods first, but he's a hell of a dancer second. Now let's get out of the realm of similarities and into some things fantasy really does different. When the old ones showed up, the planet they arrived on was ideal for creating the ultimate weapon to fight chaos. Of course, they still had to create it. So to do that, they started by moving the planet closer to the sun to warm it up, which pissed off a lot of things on it, like the dragons. Speaking of, there were a lot of races on the planet that wouldn't really like to share the room with the Old Ones' creations. So to help them with the legwork, as well as get rid of all those fellas, the Old Ones created the Lizardmen. They also created most of the other playable races in the setting, so unless otherwise stated, assume all these factions started out as the test tube babies of the Old Ones in one way or another. The Lizardmen were not this ultimate weapon against chaos, although they were still pretty good at fighting. You know how I said the orcs resisted extermination by the Old Ones? That was just them who managed it. Everyone else fell under a tide of angry lizards, dinosaurs, or angry lizards riding dinosaurs. With that small little bit of genociding out of the way, the Old Ones set about making the world fit their needs. The Lizardmen were their chief assistants, and to be the best secretaries they could possibly be, the Old Ones made them in several different flavors. All of them with a dash of Mesoamerican cultures thrown in, because if you have the option to have Aztec lizard riding dinosaurs, you have no good reason not to take it. First you have the Slan. The Slan are the best wizards in all the world. They may be big fat toad people, but the first generation ones were the ones who changed the entire planet's orbit, moving around where it needed to be in space. Moving down the generational line, they did get weaker, but that's highly relative. Second generation Slan could only cause entire mountain ranges to suddenly appear at the drop of a hat. These were the Lizardmen who directly worked with the Old Ones and delivered their messages and will to the rest of them. Next you have the Saurus. Stupid people might think that since the Lizardmen are a Bronze Age civilization at best, they're not much of a threat. Then an 8-foot-tall monster from the Cretaceous period clubs you to death with an obsidian axe, and you find out just how the Saurus were able to depopulate an entire planet. These were the generals of the Lizardmen armies. They were bred for war and only war. They're pretty straightforward, and all their characters have the same background of bred to kick ass, but this is Warhammer. That's a feature, not a bug, and they break it down to its simplest possible form. Next are the Skinks. They're little chibi gecko axolotl things that do to the day-to-day management of Lizardman society. You need a building planned out or to do basic diplomacy, you send the Skinks. They're also skirmishers. When the trees start speaking great planese, it's the Skinks doing it. They've even got their own god all to themselves, Sotek. It was a bit of a controversy when he came around at first, but the rest of the Lizardmen seemed content enough to let him be worshipped. Finally, we have the Croxagors. They're alligator men. They build the buildings and gator death roll all over enemy armies. That's
Hey, he's
it,
the
but that's all they need to
blue-collar
do. When Chaos first came and the Old Ones fled, the Lizardmen had to figure out how to not only survive, but continue the Old Ones' work in their absence, which they kind of, sort of have been pulling off a little bit. They held off the invasion at the cost of almost all the first Slan and most of their spawning pools, turning them into a very numerically disadvantaged race. Not that this stops them from still sometimes rampaging across the world, but they are largely held up in the jungles of Lustria nowadays.
Okay, I had to stop and look at this map.
Like United States of America, bro.
Low key, the shape of it, like I was thinking the
Yeah.
same thing. I was like, huh. Do they still call it Terra? For those of you, everyone in the comments, is it still called Terra in fantasy, or do they just call it Earth? Because I heard him refer to it as Earth, but I don't know if that's just because Terra is supposed to be Earth, or do they just, label it differently?
Yeah, I think they do call Earth here Terra. Because I
Terra
heard them
also?
reference it in a lot of other videos that we saw.
This is Warhammer, though. This isn't
Right.
40K. We haven't watched anything on fantasy. I mean, this is fantasy. We haven't watched anything on fantasy yet. So all the other stuff was 40K. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's all. That's what I was asking. Is the fantasy world different? Do they label it differently? Yeah. What was that?
Crocodors.
How do you say it?
Crocodors.
Crocodor? Oh, I don't know how the fuck to spell it. Okay.
Crocodor.
The alligator people. The gator people.
We fight and we fight, and how much we fight some more?
I really like thinking about orcs being able to go up against like lizard men and stuff like that. That sounds like honestly a lot cooler to me than orcs always fighting against
Each other.
or just space marines.
Yeah.
They still kind of do it though, right? Like once somebody in the hierarchy like dies, they start fighting amongst each other.
Yeah, no, I'm saying that it's cool that they actually have other creatures to fight. Is what I'm saying. Outside of just like space marines, because I feel like that's almost like space marines. I don't know. That just seems like kind of one-sided, or not one-sided, because they could exterminate.
They got multiple enemies basically.
Yeah, I just feel like I would like to see a battle between dinosaur people and orcs. I've never really thought about that. I'm like, that just sounds hella interesting, honestly.
And they both on the sides, each other's sides, and they over there fighting for the same reason type shit.
Yeah, like an alligator guy against an orc. I'm just like, damn, they're both just berserk as fuck.
They just don't understand each other's differences type
exactly
shit.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also known as South America, because Warhammer Fantasy is just Earth if someone with really shaky hands drew a map of it. They're isolationists, the Slann will spend centuries at a time meditating on the few plaques the Obelisks have left, and they really hate when tourists come to Lustria because it's usually to steal those plaques. They're all gold, you see, because gold doesn't tarnish or rust. Convenient for writing things down in a jungle, less convenient when all the warm bloods come to steal the shiny stuff. If you see a Lisman army, you're either screwed because the Great Plan dictates your death, or screwed because you're somewhere they don't think you should be. Very simple faction, but again, that's a positive. Sometimes being dino-brained is the way to go.
See, it'd be great.
Also known as the Imperium, but not as awful. These guys are the default protagonist faction. They're the strongest nation of men in the world, and that's no meaningless boast here, because there's actual competition they have in that department, unlike the Imperium. They formed about 2,500 years prior to the setting's modern day, when a pretty cool dude named Sigmar was born. Sigmar had a dream, uniting the scattered tribes of barbarian into one unified nation of mankind, to drive back the darkness and bring peace to the land. He did this chiefly by beating up everyone who disagreed with him, but in fairness, most of them deserved it. If this sounds familiar, let me just remind you that this guy was here first. Plus, Sigmar realized that outright killing everyone just because they disagree with you is perhaps a bad idea that will lead to problems later down the line, so he settled for only beating them up. Sigmar didn't just beat up people, though. He also beat up a lot of orcs. Like, a whole lot of orcs. So many orcs that the dwarfs swore eternal friendship with mankind, because if Sigmar is so kick-ass, surely the rest of humanity can't be that bad either. He united most of the tribes of man in the area, and you better believe I'll come back to the most later, and formed the Empire of Man. 50 years later, he just up and left. A little bit after that, he became a god, and the Empire soon worshipped Sigmar as the chief god of their pantheon. The Empire is pretty unique as far as fantasy factions go. Usually a fantasy setting will reach the medieval era, and then very explicitly never move past that for the next trillion years of its history. The Empire isn't like that. When Sigmar was doing his thing, it was barely the Iron Age. The dwarves giving them steel weapons every now and then was considered the height of technological advancement. Nowadays, 2,500 years later, the Empire has tanks. Good tanks? Yeah. Look, for a Renaissance age civilization, tanks are pretty damn impressive no matter how good they actually are. They have factories, mechanical horses, and countless other things that make you wonder if the book you're reading was put in the fantasy section by mistake. They also have wizards who scam people out of $50 for the thrill of it, politicians who constantly need to be wrangled by the one competent guy in the entire government, and enough floppy hats to arm the entire Holy Roman Empire with. They're still normal people, though. The three things that make the Empire great aren't genetically modified super soldiers, or lost technological secrets from a golden age, or even the direct intervention of their gods. It's faith, steel, and gunpowder. A whole lot of each. Give a man a halberd, a cause to fight for, and his friends by his side, and it turns out you can push back even the most determined of evil murder Vikings time and time again. Most Warhammer Fantasy books follow the Imperial characters around, and you get a good feel for just how fleshed out this land is through them. You've got the Heartlands, sure, places like Altdorf, where it's interconnected with the wider world, magic runs through the very city through its colleges of magic, and elves and dwarfs can be seen regularly. Then you have backwater shitholes like Ostermark, where the people are outnumbered by everything nearby that wants to kill them, and guns are still a scary black magic invention for a good half the population. Or Averland, whose most noticeable trait is that they hunt halflings for sport there. There's halflings in the Empire, by the way. They can vote on the next emperor because they baked a previous one a really good meal. They also had a civil
What
war
the
over
fuck?
pie. Don't be a halfling in Averland. You're gonna decorate someone's mantelpiece sooner or later. Of course, this is still Warhammer, fantasy or not. Sure, I said it's not as awful as the Imperium, but it still has witch hunters who will burn you alive for being a wizard, or being a mutant, or just for being a bit too ugly, because that's also a sign of chaos mutation. And it's still a Renaissance
That's
age
crazy.
civilization.
Damn.
For 90% of people, this means it's a
Shit, we might
medieval
need to get some of them
civilization,
people
but you might
here
see
now.
more pretty
the
statues and
fuck?
paintings than your ancestors did. You're still probably gonna die of the water making you poop too much. They're bordered by the undead, beastmen are everywhere once you leave the city limits, and worst of all, they have people who have sex with horses for neighbors. The Empire
What
is
the
constantly on the
fuck?
defense.
Damn,
Or-
they're
Whoa,
wild.
whoa, whoa.
They're wild for saying that.
So this is basically like the Eldar.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
By human form.
Eldar bad, Eldar bad, Eldar real bad. The fuck?
We haven't got to the Eldor yet.
I don't even.
Eldar
actually
is not till
have
the middle.
Eldar?
Yeah, they had.
Oh, do they?
They're,
Oh, nice.
they're just
They
called
still
elves
called
back then.
Okay, I was gonna say they just
Yeah.
called regular elves.
Yeah.
Dark elves. What else?
Orcs, from Chaos, from Beastmen, which are a different kind of chaos, and really anyone else who's feeling a bit bored that day. But the average citizen of the Empire will do their
Chaos
part to keep the
orcs?
hordes at bay, and at the end of the day, they did this for 2,500 years until the authors decided reality itself had to go. Which
Wait,
is
sorry. Are there Chaos orcs in 40k?
It has to be.
I've never heard it. Right? Like I'm like I
don't
feel
know.
like there should be, but
don't
what
know.
the fuck?
Because then at that point, it was just mean they already corrupted. Then.
Yeah, they're just corrupted.
You
But
know what
like
I'm saying?
I've never heard. We went through all the factions explained. We went through all the legions. We went through all everything.
Unless they got like a genetic like type that they can't like receive that type of chaos. or
That's
some
what I was
shit.
thinking.
That's,
Like they're just
weird.
not. They can't be corrupted because all they care about is like I don't
One
even
thing
know.
for.
It just fucked up my whole head here in Chaos orcs.
Well,
I
you would
didn't
think
know.
they'd be.
But it's
part
still
of the,
fantasy, like you said, though.
Yeah,
That
fantasy,
shit be
so it's different.
Yeah, it be
Yeah.
fucking my head up too. But I like how like they kept the same concept. a
Yeah,
little bit,
yeah.
a little bit.
Chaos orcs is fire. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, what was you gonna say?
I was just kind of referencing what Malik was saying about the them loving to fight so much that they want chaos. So you would think
Yeah.
to be easily
That
corrupted.
means
like
everyone
that.
would be chaos, though. Maybe that's why they don't get it. I don't even know.
Yeah.
You guys have the answers for this.
Yeah.
You guys, that's why we are here with y'all, helping us out. We appreciate you guys.
pretty good track record. They're a human, relatable nation, like if the Imperial Guard got to actually be the main characters of 40k instead of Space Marine 9001, model on sale now for $60.
Damn, they're
It's
jumping way
grounded
high.
with people having normal struggles, but also fantastical,
Damn.
with wizards and monsters being everywhere. They do have one
Beat
ultimate
that
ace
big
in the
blue
hole, though,
giant, beat
the
his
reigning
ass.
emperor, Karl Franz. The best statesman in the old world,
Karl
the guy who wields the Warhammer. You know the one, the actual real-life Warhammer logo. That's his, and he's very good at using it. He's the kind of politician who could convince you into giving him everything you own and leave you thinking you got the better deal, but also the kind of person who wouldn't do that to you. He's got everyone's interest at heart, and overall, this guy's the best emperor in Warhammer. Not Warhammer Fantasy, Warhammer in general. Kiss my ass, corpse worshippers. This one can walk, talk, and beat you to death in the name of the Empire. If you like relatable folk with a touch of the fantastic, Sigmar and his people have your back. But I did say most tribes are united by Sigmar. Unfortunately, a couple weren't able to be integrated for one reason or another. Let's talk about the one that I like first. Kislev is all of Eastern Europe thrown into a pot and mixed to boiling until it coagulated into one Slavic specialty stew. They live in a frozen hellhole, which is also their country's greatest defense. They wear thick fur pelts. They have winged hussars. They also squat in the middle of a battlefield, because such is the natural state of the Kislevite. And vodka. Even the dwarfs and their genetically
Vodka.
ingrained alcoholism respect the drinking skills of a
Drink
Kislevite.
vodka.
Kislev's job in the setting is to face tank chaos invasions before they get to the Empire of Man, which they do pretty well. Half their cities are torn down in the
Damn.
process, but they're a hardy bunch. They walk into the winter snow, and when everyone occupying their land freezes to death, come back in and rebuild. Their religion is different from the Empire's, and they view them as weak Southerners, but the two nations are still staunch allies. Mostly because when the forces of actual hell are your neighbors, anyone else is going to be a good friend. They're led by the Tsar or Tsarina of Kislev, because GW was worried you wouldn't understand which region this place is based off of. Many times, and indeed the last one before the world blew up, this was an ice witch, a handy person to have running your country when a
Ice
raging
witch,
blizzard is considered a mild day. You still can't play as Kislev in the old world, thank you GW for that extreme blue balling, but they had some pretty heavy redesigns, and a lot of the marketing for the old world did at one point feature Kislev. Here's hoping GW realizes that winged hussars riding bears is something people are interested in. Shame that sentence needs to be
Hell
said.
yeah.
I don't know why anyone would ever need to be told that.
Like the
Blah.
compass.
These are those people who have sex with horses. When Sigmar was uniting everyone, they refused to join him, because obviously they were too good to join him. Did they have some super
You know, it's so crazy. Sorry, if you guys see us taking notes, we do write our own comic books. We have our own shared universe for those of you who are new. And we have like a fantasy world, sci-fi world, superhero world, and you know all this good stuff. We have like 20 plus issues of comics, and been doing this for a long time. You know how awkward and crazy it is to write "has sex with horse." I started it, and I was just like,
I didn't even write that.
I was like, I feel like that's an important detail. You write that?
I'm about to write it right now.
Yeah, I'm writing. Okay.
People that fuck on horses.
Well, they don't just only have sex with horses.
But that's the opening main statement. Like,
That's
if I
just-
ever remember these people, like, oh, you remember that group? Oh, the ones that have sex
Oh,
with
the
horses?
one that fuck on horses?
So you're gonna bring that up in the conversation to somebody actually like these
1000%.
people.
I paused the video to...
in the back because she was with the damn horse. She was with the horse again.
I definitely
How would
paused
that
it to
sound?
make a whole statement about it. I'm definitely
How would
bringing
that
it up.
sound?
I can't imagine.
The people that fuck the horses, that's what I put.
Sounds very
That's what he said.
redneck, I guess. So, I wonder if... Okay, let's continue. We're already halfway through this, which is the crazy part.
No.
Special
Deception,
magical
I mean.
secret or a technology that could let them surpass the fledgling empire or some other race in the whole? No, but they copied the elves' homework and our French, so they decided they were too good to shack up with a future god and went it alone. Bretonia looked at all the cool advancements the empire was making, how it was a dynamic nation in a genre that usually gets to the medieval era and then freezes like it's going into cryo-sleep, and said no. We will not be doing that. We will be staying as medieval land. It is mandated by the government that technology will not advance, that society will never have any major upheavals, and that everything is just perfect the way it is. It's like that old decree the Pope made that declared crossbows were a blasphemous weapon, taken to be an entire society's philosophy. Bretonia is all about knights. Baby knights proving themselves, magical knights defending the realm and saving damsels, knights leading the country to further the goals and interests of the rest of the knights. Imagine King Arthur. That's it. Just imagine King Arthur stretched out to be a whole faction. The in-universe
like he doesn't
justification
like
is that
this
they saw
faction.
high elf
He
cavalry
doesn't.
and just ran with the concept.
saying
Out
certain
of
shit like
universe,
hella
it's just
hard.
King Arthur and every medieval stereotype thrown together. You could, admittedly, say the same thing about the Empire and the Holy Roman Empire, or Kislev in Eastern Europe, but those are eras and places fantasy writers don't usually copy wholesale, so they get a pass from me. Bretonia is the land of almost every fantasy setting ever conceived since Lord of the Rings, and it shows. Unfortunately, they can afford to do all of this fantasy stasis, because an elf goddess is playing them like a fiddle. Their precious Lady of the Lake, also known as the Elf Goddess of Magic, chooses some super special knights to become Grail Knights. They sip from her chalice of bathwater, and when the now Grail Knight emerges, they're like supercharged D&D paladins. Bullets are an inconvenience, their armor is magically toughened, and their mounts never tire, so until the Empire invents the Gatling gun, they're able to keep being aggressive backwater dickweeds. In older lore, they were tolerable, but in modern
Still
lore, someone
going
must have thought
nuts,
they
bro.
were just enough and made
I
them
know.
nice and
It's
extra
passionate,
oppressive.
and I like
The
that.
peasants are honored if the noble allows them to have 3 pennies a week instead of 2.
I do like
Ladies
knights,
who
though.
aren't magical are property because medieval times, and social
the
mobility is a
fuck?
punchline.
3
I
fucking
hope you like
pennies?
medieval medicine.
3
The Empire's
pennies.
Bro, I'm about
medicine
to kill
already is
everybody in
effective.
this
Bretonia
bitch.
medicine
3
is
pennies
the
for
kind
your
of thing that has
troubles.
a 300% fatality rate. And horses.
Oh, God!
Everyone
Oh,
has
God!
a horse. Even the lowliest peasants have a horse. A horse that more often than not eats and lives better than they do. I like horses, but I don't like them that much.
Fattest
If you've
ass,
ever been to medieval times and made that your entire personality, Bretonia's a good faction for you. Because God is real and hates me, they're also one of the starter factions of the old world, so getting into Warhammer Fantasy nowadays is pound for pound fairly easily done with Bretonia. In all honesty, pick 'em if you like 'em. It is on some level cool because for as much shit as I was giving them for being generic and bland knights, knights are cool. There's a reason every 5-year-old wants to be a knight and not a landsknecht. I mean, for God's sakes, just trying to say that word is difficult. The other army GW has refused to put onto the tabletop despite already having a direct hand in reworking them for Total War. Did you know there's a fully fleshed out Cathayan army book for GW developed? You can't have it because funds not allowed. This is a shame because Cathay is awesome. Dragons are also awesome. Cathay agrees because they're ruled by immortal dragons who the Cathayans follow at every whim. Fantasy China is a magical place and one of the few places in the entire planet that might not be a terrible one to live in. Every now and again it does what actual China used to do and implodes, and sure, those ruling dragons get along like all siblings do, i.e. barely at all, but in day-to-day life, not a bad place. And it always comes back together after imploding, usually after Mommy and Daddy Dragon come back to kick everyone's heads in until they start behaving again. It is, like I said, just fantasy medieval China. But that is a compliment.
I like how
You know
this
those
looks.
terracotta soldiers? What if they were animated by magic and also 100 feet
Ooh.
tall? Are you
Wait,
a
are
40K
they?
fan? Imagine if the Primarchs weren't utter morons and failures almost to a man. because that's Cathay. Again, for reasons I will never
Cathay.
understand, we don't have them yet in tabletop. But Total War does, and by God is it fun to play as Cathay. The Silk Road was prosperous in real life, and it's prosperous in Warhammer. So if
shit look
/ when they
peaceful as
finally
fuck.
come
It
out,
does.
prepare to show the world why China was for a good 1,000 years the most prosperous country on the planet. It's even better here because this Great Wall has magical dragon ladies guarding it. Oh, Cathay is also near the countries of Nippon, Ind, and Koresh. Nippon is Japan, Ind is India, and Koresh is Southeast Asia. I'm not giving them their own spots because no one cares about them, and I can't bring myself to either. That's it for the non-chaotic living humans, but that doesn't mean we're
this
done
guy's funny.
talking about humans. The next few ones just don't have a heartbeat. Or skin.
Hey,
These are the
shout
bad
out
guys
to,
when chaos is taking them.
first of all, shout out to Pink Chris No Works. It's a new channel for us. We're usually going through a lot of Necrit stuff. I think we've jumped over. Have we jumped? Yeah, we've done like a lot of trailers and different things like that. Yeah.
We tried other like videos and stuff like
Yeah,
that
I feel
before.
like, I feel like we've watched a couple other people, but you
Yeah.
know, Pink Chris No Works. I know I have like a few videos of his that I've put in the wheelhouse. So if you guys really want us to keep watching his videos, definitely post that in the comments. Otherwise, we might move over to Wes Hammer. We might move over to Arbiter Ian. I know I have a couple videos of his. I'm gonna have videos of all these people anyway, but just trying to find another person that we like as much as Necrit. I was gonna say because
Yeah.
Necrit was like our OG starting point. So
Yeah. Or we could say some wild shit since they've been saying wild shit in here. We can have a threesome with all of them, you know?
wait, what the fuck?
Like watching all three of them.
No, I see. I know where you're going with that. It just took me a
mine
minute.
in the gutter, bro?
Hey man, when you say threesome with all three of them, it's kind of hard not
I
to.
just
All right. Hey, I understand.
No DD. No DD.
no Diddy.
All right, let's get back. No, I'm good.
It's a lot of acronyms, bro. A lot of things going on. All right. These people look crazy.
Gotta focus on the laser beam. The freaking laser. All right. Let's go.
Okay, vampire counts.
Okay.
Let's jump back into this.
Imagine Dracula, if you will.
Hey,
Now
that's
imagine
me.
Dracula if he had a 100,000 strong army of zombies, skeletons, lesser vampires, and pretty much anything else that you could find at a Spirit Halloween. The total history of the vampire
all the
stretches
undead.
back thousands of years, but for the purposes of this video, we're only going to go back a few hundred. We go to a fella named Vlad von Karstein, because if you haven't caught on yet, this setting is allergic to subtlety. He showed up to the very on-the-nose empire province of Sylvania, which was a horrible place to live. It was covered in swamps, the people were dumb and afraid of scary monsters, and because this setting is what it is, they weren't even wrong to be so. When a peasant in real life says the witch made their family ill with the plague, it's baseless superstition. When a peasant in Warhammer says that, there's a good chance they're right. When a Sylvanian peasant says that, they are right. Vlad shows up to this province, marries the daughter of the ruling noble to become its next ruler, and despite being a blood-sucking vampire, this place sucked so hard it was a marked improvement. Even better, him and his wife Isabella actually loved each other. They had vampire kids like Conrad von Karstein, who is insane and liked to twist the heads off of peasants, and Manfred von Karstein, who is the worst. Of course, this wouldn't be Warhammer if everyone was just nice and peaceful, so one day Vlad had a brilliant idea. What if he was the Emperor? He could live forever and usher in an eternal age of prosperity, mostly for vampires, but for some of the people too. So he tried to become the Emperor. At gunpoint. Zombie point more like, but 100,000 zombies is a lot more effective than most Renaissance age guns were. He failed, but the damage was done. Him, his wife, and their children spread vampirism across the empire. Now Sylvania is barely even considered a part of it, and everyone does their best to ignore it. This is probably a bad move, because every few decades some vampire likes to try their hand at raising a massive undead army to take over the empire with. They all fail, but they're very murderous. Them failing means the empire's population only drops by 20% instead of 100%. Just watch the first episode of Castlevania if you somehow haven't, for what it's like when the midnight aristocracy
show.
goes to war. There's a lot of vampires to choose from, though, to get your specific undead needs satisfied. The von Karsteins are the classic vampires, who want to suck your blood and rule over the night. The Lamians are a vampire KGB, with spy networks in pretty much every place on the planet. Except Lustria, probably. The lizards don't take kindly to that sort of thing. The Strigoi are what
lizards
happens if
don't play
an
that
average
shit.
Florida resident became a vampire, the Necrocs are evil wizards, and the Blood Dragons are a heavy metal album cover. If you thought it was kick-ass when Dracula sent the forces of hell to wreak havoc on the living, you'll love the vampire counts. But I did mention that some of the undead don't have skin, and vampires usually have that at least. For those fellas, we need to go further south. Ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt. You now understand the basics of the Tomb Kings. Once upon a time, thousands of years in the past, the lands of Nehekara were prosperous. They had regular contact with their gods, magical constructs to defend themselves with, and when they had a good king like Setra, they would sometimes go on to conquer half the world. Then a fella named Nagash was born.
Yeah.
He's awful. This man was a monster through and through. He's really smart, though. Smart enough to capture dark elves and force them to teach him dark magic, which usually humans can't do. Smart enough to invent necromancy with what he learned. Smart enough to overthrow his brother, the king, and take over most of the land with his undead forces. And he's also quite powerful with his magic. He was eventually overthrown and cast into the desert where he died, but he invented necromancy.
That hell looks like a Necron, too.
That's what I'm saying.
It's kind of crazy. Now I understand, like, why people are like, oh yeah, this could come from... Like, it could... Because I see how they could easily write that over time passing that this bled over and everything else. I know that's... from what I've seen, that's been like debunked, and they've solidified like they're two separate things. But yeah, I could see where a lot of the parallels could come from. Like, oh, this is just earlier Warhammer that evolved into 40K.
Yeah.
Suggestion for him, such as his power. When he inevitably came back, he discovered someone had stolen his research notes and used them to make vampires. He made those vampires his generals, and no, they didn't have a choice in the matter, and then decided ruling just Nehekara with undead wasn't enough. So he formed a plan to kill everyone in the region at once, resurrect every corpse on the planet, and take over the world with his World War Z undead army. Part 1 of the plan went off without a hitch. It was only through the intervention of the Skaven, who I promise you will love, and the last living dude in the region, which kept most of Part 2 from happening. Then everyone in Nehekara promptly stood back up, realized their hearts were no longer beating, but they were still standing, and things got messy. Imagine Game of Thrones before it became horrible, with all the political fighting over who gets to be king. Now imagine Game of Thrones if every single person who was ever the rightful king was now alive at the same time fighting over what was their throne. Not they believed it to be their throne, or they wanted it to be their throne. It was the throne they sat on once upon a time.
Damn.
And also they can respawn. And also, most common people were mindless undead skeletons who had the flesh flayed from their bones with the desert winds and could only follow basic orders, like kill that guy who thinks he's the real king. This does not a stable nation
Wait,
make.
what the
Luckily,
fuck?
the priest was
These are all
that
kings,
Cetra guy who
though.
cock-slapped everyone until they started behaving again. Now the two...
You know how dope that is? To me, I feel like
They're
that's
all
super
kings,
dope.
though. They're not...
But
Fuck.
Yeah, you look at another king and you're like, are you really a king? Fight me right now. That's fire to me.
Yeah.
I like that concept. I mean, they're going to be fighting forever, but they're undead. They respawn.
Hey, what's your name, bro? You king?
I'm King
You king?
No, you can't be king.
I'm king,
bro.
man.
You can't be king.
Oh,
bro.
you on the east side or
Hey,
west
watch
side
out.
king?
Oh, this west side king.
Oh, you
what
west
you
side
mean?
king? I'm the east side king,
Oh,
bro.
get right. Get right.
Alright.
Get
What?
right.
What?
Sorry,
See,
y'all.
that don't
We're
make
gonna-
sense, bro.
Yeah, that's
we both
stupid.
kings.
Yeah.
We both kings, bro.
You're a tall
We gotta
king,
settle
I'm a
our
short
differences.
king. You're a medium-sized king.
Wait,
So,
what?
Exactly.
All right, we're going to get back in this video. Sorry for the disturbances.
Thank you for tolerating us kings and queens on the other side of the screen.
Kings and queens.
That right.
Jesus.
Kings no longer have skin, have no clear path to achieve immortal bodies to feel with again that they so crave, and no longer have the backing of their very gods. Fortunately for them, death is more of a suggestion. They can still use magic, even if not quite as good as it was when the gods were helping, and they now have eternity to do whatever they want, as long as it doesn't involve some sort of physical sensation. Sometimes they still fight amongst each other, sometimes they spend their newfound immortality pursuing whatever hobbies they want, and sometimes they sail all the way from Egypt to Sweden and burn half of it to the ground because someone stole their hat. And on the rarest of occasions, a tomb queen will tell a strapping young lad that if they still had functional genitals, she'd fuck him so hard the experience would kill him.
hey,
They're
come
very
here,
fun.
baby.
They're true neutral to the core.
Damn.
Some of them want conquest, some of them just want to find new hobbies, some hate the living out of jealousy, some don't care either way as long as they serve, and some go out of their way to find human members to recruit for their court because it reminds
Honest, this is one of the cooler looking armies.
That
Like,
looks
collecting
pretty
these
badass.
figurines too, I'd love to paint this style. Everything's kind of weathered, like all the gold and shit. That'd be dope.
If I see that little snake creature in the background, bro, I'm going home.
What is that thing that skeleton's riding on? See, it looks like it's a scorpion tail coming out. Like it's like a snake, but it has like a whole belly and shit. Like I don't know what the fuck that is. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look in. I'm gonna have to put a note actually, because I'm gonna have to look into this.
This look like the clan of Slytherin from fucking Harry Potter or some shit. Look, everybody got a little Slytherin build. Look at
I
this shit.
see, I
It
see.
just, that was very on the nose.
Yeah.
That was very funny. All right.
them of what they've lost. If you can think of a motivation, there's a Tomb King that has it. It's a very simple thing to know if the Tomb Kings are for you or not. Do you like the Mummy? Do you like ancient Egypt? Have you ever wondered what it'd be like if the Sphinx came to life and started crushing people like Godzilla? Tomb Kings are perfect for you then. And hey, look at that. They're the other starter faction for the old world. Now you can get into fantasy proper without people like me dismissively calling you a horse molester. So now we can leave this region of the world and indeed humanity, and I have forgotten 4 human nations that deserve at least a little bit of credit. Shit. Tylea is Italy during medieval/Renaissance times, so it's thousands of city-states smushed into one country. It's right next to the Skaven capital. There are worse places to live. Estalia is Spain without the colonial empire. Both of these places say they're the first civilized nation in the old world, which the empire disputes. The border princes are the land of whatever the hell you want it to be. It is an excuse to make your own homebrew army, and they fight orcs more than anything. Most of the people there are either fleeing from the empire, leaving the empire in a futile attempt to make it big, and petty nobles. Araby is exactly what you think it is. Turn Aladdin into a wargame faction, but only a background faction. And if you think that's me being dismissive of it, do please read about Sultan Jafar's military campaign against the old world. It's actually got advanced medicine, science, and magical practices and theories, but I can guarantee the only thing you're going to remember about this place is Sultan Jafar. We're gonna start by clumping all...
That was quick
That
as
was very
fuck.
quick. He did
They said,
not.
fuck them
He
dudes.
did not stop
yeah.
at all for that.
You can
Not
hear
very much to
doctorates.
say.
I got my doctorate's degree.
That's funny. I should probably write down. What's his name? Something Jafar.
Jafar.
Jafar and his new medication.
We remember his
Aladdin.
first name. Oh, what? No. No. Sultan Jafar. Aladdin. I was
Who
thinking
the fuck said that?
I did.
This motherfucker.
It's funny because that's what I thought about too. When,
Look, he
Well, that's
When
what
he
he
said
said. That's what he
Jafar.
said, though. He said, just thinking about Aladdin.
Yeah, think about
and
Aladdin.
Jafar and
Jafar.
finding out. So I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
like he said, like a lot of these are, they don't really try very hard to hide their influences. Which, I mean, honestly is kind of cool. I mean, it is Earth, so it's like how much can you really act like it's not
I mean,
places
this shit look like
that
the
it's
United
referenced from?
States.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like,
Time and stuff like that.
yeah, it's just like, how are you going to pretend like that place is not Asian influence when it's clearly Asian influence? You know
A
what I
flying dragon!
mean? Flaming dragon!
Flaming dragon! Alright, flaming dragon. Beep face.
Okay, yeah, we're going to take a pause there. We're going to make this a 2-part video. We'll pick up with elves. I feel like it's nice. We always do a lot of pausing and talking between videos, too, for those of you who are new. So, you know, we try to avoid having hour and a half long videos. It's already 58 minutes with us talking. I imagine that would be hour and a half plus. And it's like, you know, it's better just to let our brains digest a little bit. And then
Hell
come back
yeah.
with the second half. So,
Say something funny real quick. I ain't trying to put you to sleep, and I ain't trying to put myself to sleep. You feel me?
You're right.
It's a fact.
Gotta keep everybody
Yeah.
on their A game.
Yeah.
Honestly, you know, I have a couple questions for you guys, but my first thing is, I really like fantasy. I'm not gonna lie. I kind of like it. Just seems like has so much depth, so much diverse, and I mean it's crazy because Warhammer has so much depth and lore. But I mean, essentially, a lot of the things that I think they build upon in Warhammer are the same. They're very similar concepts, and they just big guys and tanks that have vampire abilities a little bit.
Yeah.
Big guys and tanks who are more Viking-like a little bit. You know what I mean? And they're basically like the same concept, but with a splash of this. Instead of this, I feel like you can have a whole entire region, like just the Tomb Kings. You know what I mean? Like there's so many different creatures in there that I'm like, what even is that thing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like. I find in 40K, and we've been going through that for like a few months now, like really diving in books and everything. And I feel like even with that, like we got through the Primarchs, right? And then I was like, okay, cool. I feel like I finally got like the different groups and stuff like that of people. And then it's like, okay, now we have chapters to go through, and it's like, oh, there's all these different chapters of like each Primarch, and I'm just like, it's almost like kind of tiring a little bit because I'm like, damn. So I can't really look at all of them, so I have to like kind of figure out which one I want to invest in and just focus on that one.
Yeah.
When I would like to kind of know about the whole landscape and know what's out there a little bit, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I feel like Warhammer is like each section is like its own book with multiple chapters. And when I look at it, and then like for this, and I know I'm just now like
You mean
know,
Warhammer 40K?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the fantasy, I feel like I don't know. They took their own spin to it. It don't seem like too many people are OD. I know I'm just getting into it, but it almost feel like it seemed like a little fun and funnier a little bit. And it might be just the way he's delivering it.
Yeah.
But like the concepts and understanding this shit make you laugh. It's cool. And I don't know. It seemed like a little bit on the lesser side. It's still crazy.
Yeah,
Niggas killing people, doing crazy shit, but
Yeah.
it's not OD,
Yeah.
OD, 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 OD. Everybody OD,
Yeah.
OD, OD.
Yeah, it's just like stacking.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I feel that.
With also this too, I like it because they specifically just talk about Terra. Everything and everyone is on just one sphere planet, Terra.
Yeah.
And then with Warhammer, it's a
Planets.
whole galaxy in different dimensions and
Ultra
warps
universes.
and stuff. And then you got another society inside the warp that's there too. So you got to think about that. Then you got your home starships too.
The Eldars.
Yeah, Eldars.
Yeah.
Homeworlds and
Man,
whatnot.
motherfuckers breeding.
Yeah,
and
so
shit
you're
like that,
like
making
you're thinking about that and try to compare this to the old world. It's totally like 180 from it, and it's nice because
Yeah.
you can actually like pay attention and retain a lot more of the old world stuff than you would kind of, at least for me, for like the Warhammer.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna jump to too many for me personally. I'll just do this for you guys because I don't want to jump too much into it. But like for sure, this shit seem a little funner. Like not trying
That's a
to
good.
be disrespectful.
Yeah, that note too. It just seems a little funner, which is weird because it's still dark. You know what I mean? Like things are still happening. And Necrit also adds like that sense of comedy when he's talking. All the most videos that we've seen, there's always he's making lighthearted of a lot of things, but everything is almost like they take themselves so serious over there
Yeah.
that there has to be one group of people, and I think that's why I kind of cling to like the orcs and Necrons, because Necrons are kind of like disassociated from all the fuckery, and they're just kind of like observing and they're still involved. They're still like, hey, we're gonna come and take over, but like
Yeah,
they're a little bit,
beings.
yeah, they're a little bit removed from that whole universe, and they're like, yo, we're better than all y'all. We're just gonna sit back and watch y'all do whatever the fuck, Tyranids are kind of just like mindless things. So I like the designs and I like the miniatures of them, but it's hard for me to be like, oh yeah, I like this, because there's not like something that resembles some type of humanoid thing that I can be like, oh, I like this guy. You know what I mean? Like, so that just seems like everything seems like it stems around Space Marines, and that's where you kind of invest your people, your energy into, and then it's like all of your enemies from Space Marine perspective. Unlike this, where it feels like you can be any one of these. Like, you know what I mean? I know a bunch of people that are going to be like, oh, I actually like the Italy influenced region. I wish you would have talked more about that, and they're going to go on their whole tangent. You know what I mean? Which people do that again people do that same thing, but within Space Marines. I feel like between the different chapters more so, which it just feels like a little bit more of a slightly pointless argument when it's like, hey, we're the same. The biggest separation is Chaos Space Marines and regular Space Marines. You know what I mean? That's the biggest, I would say, war. And we've spent a lot more time in 40K, so I feel like the fact that this is literally the first video that we watched, and we're all kind of like, very interesting.
Very interesting for sure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of similarities going back. Like I like how the Tomb Kings
Yeah.
remind me of like the Necrons, or it might be another one, the Egypt looking. Am I mistaken? The Egypt looking one in the regular 40K?
Yeah. Necrons.
Necrons, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'm just making sure.
Yeah.
It's just like, I'm tripping like a motherfucker. Anyway, it's just the similarities and like how you can cross-reference, like how they got. I'm pretty sure they got vampire ones in the regular 40K too.
Yeah.
Tripping on the blood.
But they're within
magic
like the
work.
chapter,
Yeah.
Blood Angels and things like that.
So like I like how they keep the same concepts, but like it's not too.
Yeah.
Just for me personally, I just keep bringing it back. Just
Yeah. I want to, what we're going to do later, too, for those of you who are watching all our other 40K stuff, I think pretty soon we're going to dive, now that we're learning about fantasy a little bit from, like, surface level, just, like, timelines and factions, stuff like that. After we do that, we'll jump into, like, more chapters of specifically 40K different people, so we can get, like, a deeper look at every faction. And once we do that, maybe we'll have... but see, I feel like we haven't even got that here yet. Maybe he has. I think because this is less of a big world, he's able to go a little bit deeper into like what they do, like some of their strong points. Like I can't really think of too many. When we did the factions video of 40K, I can't really think of specific legions and like what they're known for. You know, I can generally like, you know, Luna Wolves.
I got them in my notes.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of them I can't remember just off the top of my head. Like Imperial Fist, I always forget certain like with certain general names like that. I forget, and I mean they're in this Horus Rising. They refer to them, but they all just seem a lot more similar. So it's kind of hard to remember.
Yeah.
Unless you would start investing in one, like certainly like Blood Angels, fucking, you know,
Slenderman.
20 Primarchs, 9 and 9, and splitting up their children.
Yeah, I feel like I know more facts.
Yeah, I'm
about-
saying like I know facts.
Yeah,
Right.
but that's why I kind of went to like Orcs and Necrons, honestly, because I was just like, oh, those are the people who seem like, you know what I mean. So maybe it's just a me thing. Maybe it's just a us thing.
I like to fight.
If we couldn't tell, yeah.
Shout out to
makes
Orcs.
sense.
I don't even have an Orc book yet.
Well, they don't read, so it makes sense.
That's crazy.
Whoa, bro.
That's wild.
Orc read? What? No.
But I'm just saying.
So what you trying to call me
fact
an orc? Because I for sure don't like to read.
I love reading.
Fight.
I like
Orc
audiobooks.
fight. It's good.
Audiobooks are nice.
I like reading anime.
reading. What the fuck? All right, well, on that note, yeah, I think we should cut it right there. Again, shout out to all the Discord members. You guys really help, like, kind of give us a visual, or like some type of notes before we come in here. I'm trying to think of.
For sure.
There's a certain word I'm missing right now. Yeah.
I think you hit it on a point. I think it's like notes, like
Yeah.
key points to go into. Just
Key
so we're
points,
like,
that's a better
like
one,
we're
yeah.
aware or something.
Mm-hmm. They always like lay a bunch of different things out, like, oh, eventually you guys are gonna get to this and that and this and that. And then when it pops up in the video, I'm like, oh shit, okay, I've heard
remember.
a bunch of stuff about that. Yeah, so I don't feel so lost. I'm excited for the fantasy stuff. Even when we went to the Warhammer store, I remember looking at all the Age of Sigmar stuff, and I was like, damn, this shit looks crazy. I was like, man, I want to learn about this, you know?
Yeah.
Like the 40K stuff, I'm like, oh, okay, I know about this, but what is this though? You know?
Yeah, I noticed I've seen like a different shift in the store. It was just
Mm-hmm.
like War 40K, but it was still 40 like Warhammer, but it looked like it just did a little shift.
Yeah. It's hard because I feel like I've invested more in 40K, so there's still a part of me that's just like,
Still holding on to that.
yeah, I'm like, damn, do I like? I don't even know.
Don't say it in a way like you
don't know.
finna like
I
leave
feel like I
her
have
or
to
something.
choose.
No,
yeah.
no.
I feel like I'm being forced to choose.
We
but
finna
I mean, I
fuck
guess-
on both of them. We finna fuck both of them.
You don't gotta break up with this one. That's hilarious. All right, enough toxicity for this one video. We're gonna go ahead and cut it right here. We appreciate you guys. If you guys, like I said, you guys like our style of like breaking things down, and you want to see us dive deeper into things. If you guys want to see this vlog of us painting our first figurines and stuff like that, going to the Warhammer store for the first time, and Derek getting injured and all kinds of craziness.
I still got it. Yep, I still got it on my finger.
Definitely hit that subscribe button, notification bell, and that will be coming soon. Like I said, we're at like, at this point, we're at like 9,000 something, 600
9,600.
Share this with your
Something.
cousin. Share this with your mama. Share this with your baby mama. Your ex, even if you don't like her. Share this with everybody, bro. And subscribe.
Yeah. And until next time, y'all.
Hell yeah. Much love.
Peace out.
Peace. Much love.
Deuces.